In this video, we'll be talking about the media that you can use in order to communicate a merger or an acquisition to your workforce. First of all, you would have to determine what is the message that you have to deliver. Remember that what the executive wants to say to the workforce is not necessarily what the workforce wants to hear. The workforce wants to hear very first, what is going to happen to me? Will I still have a job? What's going to happen when the two companies are coming together? What is going to happen when the integration is going to be effective? So what about me? It's not because the employees are going to be selfish, but it's actually a normal reaction. So if you tell me that it's going to be a massive change, the first thing is like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So whilst the executive actually are more interested in things relating to the vision, to the performance, to the growth of the company as a result of this change management initiative. Be very careful because you would want the message to be targeted to your audience. So that's fine. Of course, you will have to explain the reason why the merger or the acquisition has gone ahead, what is the vision, what are the values, what is the growth, how is it going to work. This is fundamentally important, but especially at the very beginning, what you want to communicate is what is going to happen to you as an employee. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. Of course, once you have identified the message, you will actually have to identify the media that you can use in order to deliver the message. This, of course, depends on the culture of the company and also whether, for example, if the company is all in one geography or, for example, is spread around different locations. For example, I've been working recently with a client that had about 1,000 employees and they were all in the same location. I mean, they were in the same building. Of course, in this case, it was very, very easy to organize town halls, for example, to organize monthly meetings with the senior executives because everyone was in the same location. Of course, if you got, for example, companies that are based in different locations, it's going to be more tricky because, of course, your CEO or senior executive cannot be in the same place at the same time. But technology, of course, can help. So, for example, you can use the video conferences, teleconferences, and actually other means that will give the possibility to people in other geographies to be the recipient of the messages. Again, careful with the timelines. Actually, I had clients that wanted to organize this sort of video conferences and actually it would have required, for example, for some employees to watch the message in the middle of the night. This is not acceptable. Actually, that's not something that you want to do, especially when you have just acquired the company or just merged with the company. So again, take into consideration the different timelines. I know it can sound very trivial, but to be honest, sometimes when delivering a message, the most common sense points actually are completely missed. You can also, for example, get videos and they can be uploaded on the intranet. You can create newsletters, you can create committees, so communication committees. As I said in the previous video, if you have unions, you can actually involve the unions in the communication. You can also have specific training, so you can get different groups of employees to whom you are going to deliver certain kind of messages. You can also have hotlines. These are also very helpful in order to deal with the stress the employees are going under. And also you can have press releases. So don't choose 2 billion different medias. Is not necessary. So it's true that it's better to over communicate than under communicate, but bombarding people with too much information is not going to do you any good. So determine what are the messages that you have to deliver and then determine the media that for the specific company are best. How do you do that? Ask. Simple as that. So for example, you can run some focus groups with some key stakeholders and actually determine what would be the best medias and actually how the information will be perceived and received by the employees. So again, also the message will have to be calibrated considering the recipient, and the media that you're going to use has to go accordingly. Always ask, because again, sometimes you can assume that the message from the CEO is the most reliable, but let's pretend that the CEO has been involved in some dodgy deals recently and his or her reputation is not particularly good. Well, you wouldn't want actually to get that person involved in delivering key messages, also because the market may not actually react particularly well. So take into consideration the history of your company and what is the best option in terms of media. If, for example, you are in a quite traditional environment, like, for example, law firms or financial services, going all creative very likely is not going to work. On the other side, if you, for example, work in a fashion business or in a creative or media business, going very corporate may actually not be very effective. And that's why the culture of the company is fundamentally important. Another thing that we have to take into consideration with regards to the media is to make people that have frequent contacts with key stakeholders, make them aware of the key information. And that's because you don't want actually the key stakeholders to be left in limbo, actually thinking that some of the key employees in the company are not in the loop. Again, is the perception of your company, for example, externally. And if you are into certain joint venture or you've got some key suppliers, also key customers, you want to make sure that the message is consistent. The media used is actually consistent, but most of all is relevant, and that the key people are giving out a consistent message to your key stakeholders. Remember that is a very, very complex process, and if the perception outside is that in the company they don't have a clue what they are doing, your shares are going to go down. So again, it's a threat for growth and for the achievement of synergies. Thank you so much for watching.